Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mufti Faraz Adam, who is the founder of Amana Advisors. You're the head of Darul Ifta, the Mu'adh ibn Jabal Institute, accountant as well. Mufti Faraz, you'll have seen him many times on IFG and the various different activities that we do. He's one of the, alhamdulillah, foremost Islamic scholars in the Islamic finance field globally, alhamdulillah, today. So we're very blessed to have him here with us, and we're going to cover all sorts of topics today. We're going to go, of course, into Islamic finance, how it is today, where it could be, all of the wrinkles within Islamic finance. But you may not know this, but Mufti Saab has a history as effectively a divorce Mufti, right? You spent some time...
Marriage
Mufti. And we've got some very, very powerful stories that Mufti Saab shares with us. And we also go into a whole area of self-development, about mentorship, how you find your own path in life, how you think about your career, how you make sure that your marriage is strong, how you think about, where you're going in your life, and all of the topics in and around self-development as well. So with that, Mufti Saab, let me dive in. So Mufti Saab, how does someone become Mufti?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Becoming a Mufti, I would say it's not something that you just become, right? It's something it's a lifelong dedication, a lifelong service, right? A Mufti is somebody who services people. That's the key thing, right? So you're servicing people. Another thing that the scholars always mention, it's not good for a person to declare himself as a Mufti, right? A Mufti is, in the Arabic language, Ismul Fa'il, as you've studied the Arabic, right? Someone who gives fatwa. Right? Yeah. It's a doing thing, right? It's not you just become a Mufti and that's it. But it's a lifelong, I would say, dedication, study, and a service for Islam, right? I think that's the most important thing to see as a service, where there's hundreds of people across the world who have so many questions. Where do they go to? And what we saw from our teacher, rahimahullah, Mufti Ibrahim Desai, he spent his life, this always amazes me, he spent his life in the service of answering questions and just functioning as a Mufti. So any person can ask him any question of Islam and he would answer that question, fulfill their current need.
Mufti Taqi Usmani, he recently came to Leicester.
When he came a couple of years ago to the UK and he visited Leicester, he mentioned in a gathering of scholars that giving fatwa is potentially the most rewarding action. And I was taken aback. Why is this the most rewarding thing? And what's the wisdom behind this, what he's saying? Then he said that when you answer somebody's query, they're asking to make amal and practice upon what you're telling them. As opposed to somebody who's just sitting on a Friday doing a speech, many people come late, they'll listen, they'll go away. It's just like
a theoretical thing.
Theoretical.
A little bit.
But when it's actually a fatwa, somebody's asking you a question, it's about, okay, tell me, how do I perform my salah? How do I give my zakah? Or is this transaction halal for me to do? Yeah. And when you guide them, assist them and support them, they go on to do something knowing that it's halal. So you've facilitated halal.
And for people who are listening, is there an etiquette to ask a Mufti? Like, when should you ask a Mufti? When shouldn't you?
Yeah, so one of the books that I teach in the Darul Ifta here, where we teach Ifta and train students to become Muftis, is Mufti Taqi's famous book, Usulul Ifta wa Adabuhu, right? It's on the principles and manners of fatwa. In there, he has an entire section explaining the etiquette and manners of asking scholars and the way even scholars deal with people. It's a two-way thing. It's a dialogue.
Because it's not just rules, is it? And an usul, it's the adab as well.
I think that's where a lot of the training comes in. It's easy to just read the principles yourself, but then to sit with an expert, with a teacher, somebody who's gone through this training and learn how do you operationalize these principles. And that's really the most important thing in Ifta. That's why it's so important to study under somebody who's studied with experts or who is an expert himself. That's when you really understand the art. It's an art, right, of Ifta.
Your teacher, Mufti Desai, are there any examples or stories from when you saw him getting asked a fatwa and how he responded just at the adab level that you learnt from?
SubhanAllah, there's so many incidents about him, rahimahullah, when, he was, as he always knew how to behave, how to act with every single person. I just recall one time, somebody came to sell an item. There was a gentleman, old gentleman, who would just sell, door to door, go knocking door to door and sell items. So he came to the Darul Ifta at a very odd time, just say about 8 o'clock in the evening. The students are now relaxing. And Mufti Sahib rahimahullah, he welcomed him inside the building, made him sit down, and he said, okay, I'll buy this from you, this item. Okay. Now this person was living literally hand to mouth, right? So he bought this item from him, and then after a couple of minutes, Mufti Sahib rahimahullah, he gifted the item back to him.
Allahu Akbar.
And he said, here, take this back, it's yours. And we were all shocked. Like, why is he doing this? He said, look, this was a sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he purchased and gave it back.
Yeah.
Right? So he said, I just wanted to practice upon this. And when he said that, he just smiled at the person, he smiled at us. And when he would smile at us, like we'd know that he's teaching us something, a lesson, right? That's just one thing from so many things. At times, he'd be with youngsters, with the elderly, on the phone while he's writing. He was just so calculated and measured. Like you just know what to say, when to say, and how to say it.
Yeah. And do you think that now the times have passed on, and we're living in 21st century UK, where we've got the TikTok generation, and we've got the situation that we're living in today, right? Both, I guess, good and bad. Is there like trends that you've seen that have evolved in the way that people are asking questions, types of questions, and even like, I guess, changes in the way Muftis are responding, both good and bad?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we are changing as times change and as we advance with technology, right? I'm not such a TikTok Mufti, right, at all. I don't use TikTok. Until recently, I was very much an email kind of Mufti, right? So still old school in that sense. Just recently, I thought, you know what? WhatsApp has its benefits. So we opened up a WhatsApp channel and a Telegram channel just to make it easier. Why? It helps the Muftis voice noting. Like I'm very fond of sending voice notes, right?
So much quicker, isn't it?
You can explain so many things in one go without typing. So it helps in that way. And secondly, just to be more accessible. It's important to be accessible for people. People should feel like, I've a scholar. Email sometimes are, you don't know who you're talking to, if there's somebody on the other side. But WhatsApp, at least last seen, there's been somebody there,
yes.
right? And then you get people.
Khizr's got a workaround for that.
Oh, wow.
So Khizr, when it pops up on his screen, he can read it, but it comes up as not seen, I think.
Yeah, that's a trick on WhatsApp that people use quite often.
There's these modern hiyal that people have started using.
I mean, sometimes I received a question recently saying, I know you're looking at this, I know you're reading this, answer me now, please reply, right? You want to, you're frustrated at that moment, but you control your emotions and you answer still politely. You always maintain your professionalism as a scholar. Right?
Of course. And you know what? I actually really welcome those kind of moments, because I find that, and you'll probably find this, as a senior, scholar, someone who's respected in the community, you won't actually get that much hate, direct hate anymore. And actually, sometimes it's quite good, right? Because if you can channel it to control the ego and
absolutely, 100%. You know what? I remember one thing. Every time I receive such a message, I just remember that Allah has sent that person to fulfill their Islamic need to me. So Allah has given me an opportunity to serve somebody. So why should I ever be angry or frustrated? And that kind of tames and calms the entire situation down immediately. But yeah, just we're human. That for that one split second, we'll feel that. Of course. That kind of rage inside.
Yeah.
But then you calm it down.
I remember, I think there was a story of, is it Umar radiallahu anhu, where he gave a khutbah, and it was just kind of saying that, he was kind of, lowering himself, that I was a shepherd and I was looking after sheep, and, and gave all these kind of stories of how, he wasn't someone special. And this was obviously the Khalifa. And then people asked him, and he said that he did that because he felt something in his heart, that, he was, becoming, arrogant or bigging himself up. So really powerful. Mufti Sahib, the topic that I think, actually before we get into the topic that we all want to talk about, Islamic finance, mentoring. So this whole discipline of ifta, I guess, is very linked to mentoring, right? Because you don't really, you were discussing before, we don't really teach ifta in the classic sense. It's more of a mentoring, I guess.
Yeah, ifta is not a course, it's a program in that you have a mentor, a senior looking over you and checking your every move. So where I studied with Mufti Ibrahim Desai rahimahullah in South Africa at Darul Ifta Mahmudiyya, Ifta was a program in that you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you'll do dhikr together, you have to perform tahajjud. It's part of the syllabus, you have to perform tahajjud. He'll check every single day, he would check like 15 students, 10 students, right? Alhamdulillah, I was fortunate that I was the first class in Darul Ifta Mahmudiyya, this new institute. So there's only 6-7 of us at the time. So we had a lot of one-to-one time with him. And so he would check every single day. We'd have a little notebook. We'd have to tick what we've done, how much Quran we've read, how much books we've read, how many pages in a book. All your salah, your nawafil, have you performed that? You write everything. And if you've missed out one thing, he'll call you and he'll ask you, why did you miss this?
Oh, really?
Yeah, for 2 years, it's required part of the institute. And then not only that, your spiritual development, along with your academic development, your spiritual development. Like how is your heart? Your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts. Are you getting closer to Allah through this activity? Which is super important, because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, why are we doing everything that we're doing? It's just for the ultimate goal, to please Allah and to gain closest to Allah. And if what we're doing right now is not getting us closer to that, then really we're not doing anything.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? So the way he would train us and the way he taught us was, Iftar is not a course, it's a program. So you have your studies in the day, your lessons and lectures, your arguments, your debates, your researching, all of that. But then at the night time, you're on the musalla and the prayer mat, crying to Allah for acceptance.
Yeah. Now, if you're not doing that, as you said, what's the point? What about Mufti Saab? The thing that I have noticed is that this aspect of suhbah and spending time with wise people or mentors is something that has, I think, decreased over time. Like, I remember my dad, he gave bayt to Hakim Akhtar in Pakistan, in Karachi, and I know that in his generation that was a thing, right? People would spend time with scholars, and it was a different kind of way of life, I guess, right? And it's very different today. What would your advice be to someone growing up in, let's say, the UK, USA, wherever in the West today, and they're trying to grasp for that aspect of things?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a mentor, right? Whoever you are, wherever you are, in whichever industry, right? Mentorship is something which is mainstream, right? In every industry, they talk about mentors and leaders. There's so many mentoring programs out there. And your development in Islam, your spiritual development, your academic development, you need mentors as well. So there's no denial of the need of it, rather, but how do we go about it? I think that's the main question. In this day and age when life has become so busy, it's not the same as before, where people who spend 10, 20 years with their sheikh or teacher or scholar that they are inclined towards. Definitely spend some time, go to the gatherings, if it's an annual program, if it's a monthly program, visit a scholar of your choice that you are inclined to, but then keep in touch. It's so easy. Listen to their lectures on YouTube or wherever the lectures are streamed, and then also write to them, keep in touch, your progress. How are you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, how are you feeling? Especially your spiritual kind of development. That's very important. So always keep in touch, and especially for students of knowledge, it's even more important now, because with all the advancement, the opportunities that people have, the lifestyles that we live, you need to be guided. We need guidance continuously, and that's what a mentor provides. So I would say keep in touch, number one, always, as much as you can. Of course, you don't want to tell your mentor that, oh yeah, today I'm going shopping, right? Or today I bought a new car, or those are irrelevant. Keep it relevant to, and some people do that. It's almost you become a friend, but it's not about being a friend. It's about taking things that matter to the scholar. So keep in touch, number one. Two, take as much as benefit. If you can't visit them in person, read their writings. The scholars mentioned that if you can't have the companionship of scholars, then read the books of scholars, because books are a form of companionship.
Yeah.
Right? Your mind is framed by what you read and what you're exposed to and what you're influenced by, right? So read the books of scholars which are, spiritually aware, alert, and have, worked upon their souls.
Yeah, agreed. A side point, where if you think about how a child develops language, it's firstly through listening to their parents, and obviously that's where you don't just take in language, you take in a lot of the underlying connectivity behind the language, right? And then I was thinking about how we teach kids to read, and the people that we entrust our kids to, with stories. That's how you learn about cause and effect. That's the heart of human kind of thinking, right? And the people that we entrust to give our kids the stories, these causes and effects, are J.K. Rowling, Charles Dickens, Michael Morpurgo, and all of these guys, and actually, that's quite a frightening thing. I mean, if you look at it on the film side, right, that's another cause and effect, a lot of narrative there. So yeah, your Mufti Desai, he was your mentor. He was saying this. I think there's a lot of wisdom there, right? Because he's saying you map your brain in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, wherever you read, expose, consume, right? Wherever you're exposed to or you consume will influence you and impact you. So it's like, it's your choice. How do you want to shape up yourself? It's like, the saying, you are what you eat, right? That's true for even your physical, but even your mental.
It's crazy.
Right? Mentally, you are what you eat and what you consume. That's what you become.
I was reading this book about how they did studies about black people in America before and after Barack Obama came in, like a week or 2 weeks before, and then a few weeks after. Nothing else had changed, but they performed significantly better on the tests because of just the self-confidence that they got. Then they did this other experiment with Asian women, and in one experiment they really emphasized the fact that they're women and they're not so good at maths, and they didn't do as well. And in the other one they emphasized that you're an Asian, everyone knows you're good at maths, and they did much better. So it's remarkable that just the way you frame things.
Yeah, and this is true for everything. I mean, even for Muslims, Islamic finance, us being Muslims in the UK, when you get that confidence from the external society, it really empowers you further, gives you that confidence, and your own performance, I think, would increase.
Yeah, and Mufti Saab, now coming to Islamic finance. So I'd love to hear, you obviously work with so many people in the Islamic finance space. You've studied it and worked in it for a number of years. Where do you think the industry is at today, and where do you think our community is at vis-a-vis the industry as well? And yeah, where should we be heading? What should we be aiming for in the next 20, 30 years?
Yeah. I think if you look at 50 years, right, the last 50 years since Islamic finance has started, its infancy, what we needed was two things. We needed some form of governance for Islamic finance, these leaders and makers, right, or change makers in the industry, and we needed products. We really needed some products. So at least there's something on the menu, right? So the first 50 years is just about getting presence. That's how I see it. And alhamdulillah, now we've reached a stage where we are a menu item. There's alternatives available to riba-based financing, and I think that's a remarkable achievement, right? And so we have headlines. We have Islamic finance has X trillion dollars worth of assets. We have all these headlines, and we mainstream news. The next 50 years for me is about optimization and I think impact. That's what it's about: optimization and impact. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? It's about really bringing Islamic finance down to grassroots, because the first 50 years was institutional, and it had to be institutional to be at that level where you are now impacting. You're talking to the FCA, FCA are interested, or any regulators interested in Islamic finance, banks are interested. You'd have to have products at that level, right? But now it's really about how does a common person in the street who's seeing Islamic finance everywhere, but he's not really benefiting or engaging with it, how do we make it more accessible? So I think the next 50 years is about optimizing, and it's more about impact. Now let's make what we have in Islamic finance more, I would say, wholesome, and more something which is more tangible to people. They can say, yeah, there's a clear, tangible difference beyond just the contracts and you could say what's underneath the bonnet, right? Beyond that, let's feel it as well. I think people are crying out and they want to see how it feels to engage with financing done in an Islamic way.
Yeah, for sure. And in your conversations with people on the street or people in the masajid, what's your sense of what's people's impression of Islamic finance? What do they want from it? Are they happy? Are they unhappy? How do they think about things?
I think it's just accessibility. Of course, one of the major issues right now is most Islamic finance products, not all, but many of them, sometimes when it comes to pricing, it's typically, and as you know, you've done a lot of like research and studies on this, right? On the IFG platform, tend to be relatively more expensive. And there's reasons behind that, which we could understand. But people want some kind of like competitive pricing, or at least they want to, and I guess there's a voice amongst the people like Islamic finance should be cheap or should be almost charitable activity, right? Which is of course not the case. It's financing based on Islam. It's a business at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But at least some kind of competition or some kind of like, you could say, you're marking to what's actually happening in the conventional.
Really helps.
Yeah, really helps.
You know, so we're doing this, as you know, the fixed income fund, and we noticed, I think yesterday or the day before, that the rates have significantly dropped in the market, which I was thinking that's actually job done, really.
Yeah,
so just as soon as you have a little bit of competition, suddenly
everything drops.
Suddenly that it shows how much margin can be narrowed.
And that's why, from an Islamic perspective, competition is what's promoted, right? It really has an impact for society. So it's wonderful that, mashallah, I'm really happy this fixed income fund is coming forward. And I think it'll be a game changer.
Inshallah. And Mufti Sahib, around Islamic finance, I want to go into the knotty subjects, right? The ones that I can ask, that the people who are watching this will want to know the answer to. So things like, how do you think about, the, let's say, imperfections with things like Islamic mortgages, or you've got, the types of financing that happen, and some of the, I guess, compromises, some of the tweaks that are made there to make things function in the UK. How should people think about that? So I'm like, let's pick one example, to make it concrete. So Islamic mortgages, there's a perception that an Islamic mortgage might lock you into debt in some way, right? Because there's kind of an end point to having to exit from the payment. How should people think about stuff like this?
Yeah, so these kinds of issues, scholars on the different Sharia boards will debate these matters, right? It's never that a product has just come to market and scholars are ticking everything off and certifying. It never works like that. There's so many back and forths. The scholars themselves, truly and honestly, I've seen so many of these great scholars. They do fear Allah. From my perspective, I've seen them. They actually, are accountable. And so when they are trying to facilitate something or looking at something, they're not only looking at the Sharia compliance, that's number one, Sharia compliance, but then regulation, tax issues, practical, legals. There's so many angles to consider before a product is signed off, right? So certain times you have to structure the product in such a way where it's efficient from a tax perspective, or it works from a regulatory perspective, or from a legal perspective it's fine, or from a risk perspective, right? Now, all these different dimensions have to satisfy for the product to come to market. So sometimes there's trade-offs involved. It's never that Sharia compliance is traded off. It's never the case. But if there's a riwayah or a methodology within the Sharia and mu'amalat that can support a particular practice, then scholars would potentially lean that it's fine to do this because there is some scholars, or there is a view in fiqh which supports this practice, and this is for the greater good. Sometimes it's an interim solution. But these conversations do happen behind the doors, right? Behind the scenes. They do take place. So yeah, I would say that what's probably needed is just more understanding, more reading from the general masses, and even explanation from scholars at times, and these kinds of discussions would really help people. And I think we've discussed this before. It's important that we're on a journey. Everybody needs to understand this. We're on a journey in Islamic finance. We're still in its infancy, but we need to stick together, work together on this. There needs to be some transparency from the Islamic financial institutions on where we want to go to. What's the vision? What's the 2050 vision, right? Disclose that to the people so the people are aware. And the people know that there are actually some promises that by 2030 this is going to be different. It can't just be a one-way street, because Islam is also, when it comes to financing and transactions, it's a balancing act. Both parties have power. It's not just one party imposing everything as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, we've discussed, right, I think that's the issue here, where I think the Muslim community, if they don't see that's the vision, then they either say, we're kind of happy with what we've got, or we're unhappy with it and we're going to leave it, right? And then the practitioners or the scholars or the people on the ground, if they aren't progressing things, it'll have that impetus, then you kind of have this like fossilization of like, okay, where we are is fine. It's kind of like, it's been signed off once, it's been signed off twice, therefore this is it. And then I think, you know, the whole thing just kind of stagnates. But inshallah, like, I think if we have that vision of, okay, this is where we're headed, then hopefully you can kind of break out of the shackles.
Yeah, I mean, look, we live in a system which is fundamentally not Sharia compliant, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to develop something like a rose from concrete, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow a rose from concrete. How do you do that? There's so many challenges, but we need to have some kind of presence initially.
Yeah.
And then I think Islamic finance is a beautiful way to teach people about Islam.
It's da'wah, right? Really?
It is da'wah for me. Like, I was on a conference call and a webinar with majority non-Muslims, and I was just explaining Islamic finance. I thought, look, how do I explain Islamic finance in a way which makes sense, right? I said, look, you walk on the street, you go to your corner store or shop, wherever, you look behind the counter and you see cigarette packets. What does it say? This will kill you, right?
Yeah.
Or you go to you see any advertisement, billboard, which is about betting. It'll say, you know, make sure you know the rules and regulations. Children shouldn't be doing this and that, right? Alcohol, only 18 plus. I said, this is what Islamic finance is. Islam is just telling you, stay away from all these things, just like you see in practice. That is Islam, right?
Yeah.
Because these things are harmful for society at the end of the day.
Banks, stay away.
Banks, stay away.
Only
Like, we
18.
put that. So it's like,
This will kill you.
Islamic, exactly. Like, it's just so obvious. And everything which Sharia tells you, there are warnings typically in the market, right? On the same thing. Casino, gambling, you know, same thing, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So when I said that to them, and they were like, wow. I said, because these things, we already know they're not beneficial for us, but it's become our kind of nature. People do these things. And when I mentioned Islam in this particular way, they were really like fascinated in that they've actually invited me again to speak about Sharia finance and being powered by Sharia. That's what I've called it, being powered by Sharia. So it's a beautiful way to explain to people what Islam is all about, because finance is the global language now, right?
100%.
It's a language that everybody understands, everybody talks from top down. So you can use this language so efficiently, powerfully, and articulate what Islam is saying in this particular language.
And I'm really excited and optimistic about the next 50 years from like a macro perspective, because, you know, the earth is messed up because of the carbon emissions. We're going to have all sorts of crises coming, and I don't think we've clocked as a human civilization on that. But with that also comes great flux, and with great flux you look at radical ideas, and I think that's where things like Islamic finance, if we can show a working model, can actually be very rapidly adopted, because, you know, in this, like, what's causing this flux is this mass inequity, right? And of course Islamic finance is against that. So I'm quite excited about it. I also think that it's a great form, it's a really powerful form of giving da'wah if we can get it right. Because, you know, what better way of showing, you know, goodness than, you know, actually seeing it in practice and saying, yep, this is how we do it. And then you see other people adopting that. And that's the way that, you know...
Look, for Islam is beneficial. Like, that is the truth. Economically, it's beneficial for everybody, right? If we implement it properly and all the barriers are removed, right? The system like supports it, then 100% is beneficial. Why wouldn't people adopt something beneficial for themselves? It's just we haven't demonstrated it in a way which is beneficial yet. It's not really been done. So it's something that we need to work towards. And I tell all my friends and colleagues and students that if you're working in the Islamic finance industry, really see yourself as a person who is, you know, building this system, right? Either, inshallah, one day we'll live to see an economy and a system where everybody gets to benefit from the different things in Islam, your waqf, your zakah, your charity, your trading, your transacting, no exploitation, you know, all these things that we admire and aspire. But if we don't live it and we can't see in our lifetime, then we've spent a life developing something which the next generation will benefit and profit from, inshallah.
Yeah. And Mufti, on this topic of Islamic finance and, you know, the differences of opinion, huge differences of opinion out there on things, right? Some people would say conventional banks are fine to use. Others would say that, you know, Islamic banks even are haram. Whilst others would say Islamic banks are okay. There's so much conflict and debate around this whole space. How, you know, how have you found it, first of all? and how should we as a community think about just navigating through this? This
Honestly,
minefield?
I run from this subject, right? But it's like conflict and debate, something which every household has it today, right? Unfortunately, we live in a time where conflict is so rampant, right?
Yeah.
You're probably driving down to Leicester today, or driving up to Leicester, and you're conflicting with something or debating something, right? It's just the way we are. But then we make it very personal. I guess many a time it becomes very emotionally driven and personal. All I tell people when people ask a question is, follow a scholar, and this is really the guidance from the classical scholars. Follow a person who's most knowledgeable in this area and in your eyes has the most like God-fearing attributes. That's it. Then you take their view. They're qualified scholars. They're knowledgeable, and they fear Allah from what you can see. They're observant of everything which Sharia tells them to. Take their opinion and carry on. Just that's probably don't go around shopping for different views or make things. Just stick to a person who you have trust in. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And what about because on social media today you get all sorts of views out there, right? Halal, haram, and everything in the middle. How should people, navigate that? And when they're talking about even things in themselves, right, in dinner parties or whatever, how should they think about that?
It's very important that whenever we speak about Islam or anything to do with Sharia, we're very cautious, because when you're saying that this is halal or this is haram, and that's why scholars, one of the teachings in ifta and fatwa is we don't use the word haram, right? This is actually a Hanafi school approach. Imam Muhammad rahimahullah and others have mentioned this, that we use the word makruh because Allah, as He mentions in the Quran, He warns us against using the word hada halal wa hada haram. These are words which are very powerful, right? So we don't have the authority and audacity to say those words. Allah is the shari', the one who is the lawgiver. So what we do is say, this is maybe discouraged, this may be disliked, this shouldn't happen, you should avoid this, discourage this particular practice. So when people are talking on dinner tables, they should be very cautious about talking about Islam, because when you say, I think this is like this, what you're saying is, Allah would approve this particular practice. And if you say this is not permissible, you're saying that Allah, in front of Allah, you can stand up and defend this view. And it's very serious what you're saying, you're accountable. So we should never ever be so, you could say, confident in what we say if we haven't studied properly, right? That's one thing. Second thing, how do we navigate these different views on YouTube and social media?
Or even not, like from different scholars, right? There's some reputable scholars who are saying, let's say, 2-3 different things.
The simple consistency is really important, like in every walk of life. So just have one scholar you turn to, you take their view. It'll help you mentally in your Islam, in your day-to-day practice. Yeah, sometimes there'll be a need to go to a different scholar, right? That's fine. But typically revert to whoever you trust, whoever's your local scholar, or whoever you have a lot of acquaintance with. Sometimes there might be certain scholars. For example, one scholar is an expert in medicine, so you refer to him. Another scholar is an expert in finance, you'd refer to him. So go to the scholars who are experts in that particular area. I think that's really important, because a lot of confusion comes when you go to one scholar for everything. And not every scholar, of course, is an expert in everything. I don't have expertise in medicine, right? And that's why I'm really passionate about super-specialisation. This is, I call to it so much, because as scholars and students of knowledge, we need to super-specialise to serve the community. Everything's so complicated, honestly. Like, look at medicine, how complicated that is today. To give fatwa on medicine and medical matters,
it's not easy.
It's like COVID, all this organ donation, transplants, how they work, how they operate, why it's needed. You need to know so many things before you can reach an answer. Now, if I just look on Wikipedia and give an answer, I'm not doing justice to knowledge. Forget just to myself. I'm fooling myself, right? So we really need to study so many things before you can become proficient and articulate, and you can express a view in an area. So the super specialization, I think it's the need of the hour.
So there's a very deep point about medicine and Wikipedia. So my friend, he was studying for his exams at Oxford, and there was a finals paper coming up the next day. Oh no, not finals, I think, it's some end of year paper. And it was a very, very specific topic in medicine. And he noted that someone had made an edit and he had changed it from the right thing to the wrong thing.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, that's deep. Because the only people who that someone will have done it will be at Oxford doing this paper. And he's done that because I think it's a competitive exam. So yeah, definitely don't trust Wikipedia.
But now we have ChatGPT, right?
That's true.
So Wikipedia's gone us old school. Now it's ChatGPT. You go there, ask, and you get your answer.
You get your answer immediately. That's dangerous. That's so dangerous. And I think the other one, this is to make your medicine fatwas easy, Mufti Saab, is that I think it's like 60% placebo. Because I was reading the same book and it's full of these studies, and he was saying that it doesn't actually matter as long as they feel like they've
had something. Yeah.
So maybe you could become hakim as well at the side.
So, honestly, I try to just focus on one area. And I know scholars who are passionate about medical matters. You just refer people there, you go there. That helps. Of course, there are certain things which everybody can answer, right? Simple questions. Like gelatin, right? Those kind of things are quite straightforward. But there are certain matters which require research. And so I just don't really answer those questions. You just refer to scholars who are more passionate about those areas.
Makes sense. Getting into your past life, Mufti Saab. So you used to do a lot of fatwa, a lot of counselling around, I guess not counselling, but guidance around marriages and marital issues. Have you got any stories or lessons for us to share? Generally, firstly, but also specifically around money, because I know that's the biggest, I think, number one breakdown for marriages today is due to money matters.
I think, so once I graduated from IFTA, it was like a free-for-all. You answer any queries and questions. At that time, I wasn't really convinced by the idea of super-specialisation. I was like, you're a free-for-all mufti. Anything comes, you answer your questions, you support people, service people. And so there'd be, as there is now, in fact it's increased, so many more queries and issues with regards to marital matters coming, disputes, counselling, mediation issues. There was once a time where a couple came. It was actually the man himself. He came to me and he said, look, I've given my wife 3 divorces. I've said talaq 3 times. I said, oh no, these are the scariest questions because they're newlywed, right? They spent probably 1 year. There's a child actually in the marriage, right? Now, as a scholar, we're always taught by our teachers, you try to save the marriage, right? As much as you can. So you think, okay, how do we save this marriage? So you look at different, books, any way to interpret what he said in a manner which saves the marriage. So he went to so many scholars. All the scholars said that your marriage is over. Now he comes to this miskin here, right? And he asks me, is my marriage over? And I felt sorry for the person, right? And you do feel sorry, and it affects you mentally. When you go home and you don't think straight. I said to him, what he presented to me at the time, I said, this is in the Hanafi school, there's an idea of emphasis of talaq. That sometimes when a person says talaq 3 times, like talaq, and the person doesn't know, right, that it's in the meaning of 3 talaqs. He thinks you have to say it 3 times to give the meaning of talaq once. There is some discussion in the Hanafi school to allow this, right? That it's just one divorce. So I told him this. And I was feeling so happy and so good about myself. I saved a marriage, right? And then he went home and he stayed with his family. 1-2 weeks passed by. And then I started getting some doubt because the family came back to me and said, we want your answer in writing. I said, no problem, I can get this in writing to you. So I had students at the time I was teaching. I said to them, look, let's research this, put everything together. Started writing. And then I started feeling a bit, the books were saying something and what happened was something different. He wrote talaq times 3 and the books are talking about you saying the word talaq specifically 3 times.
He did a divorce over what?
X3, yeah? That's what he wrote.
Text message.
Text message, X3, right? And then a mufti in Leicester, he called me, he said, look, are you sure about this answer, right, that you've given? And he said, if I was you, just look at it again.
But text messages changes things, right?
No, so if it's ascribed to the wife, which it was, it's still a divorce. You can still count, right?
But it was just one bubble on the message.
But the thing is, when he wrote, it was X talaq X3, right? Times 3, basically.
And it was
in the
seen
message.
by the other person.
Seen, even if it's not seen, right?
That's
it's
true.
Issued,
intention,
right? It's as long as the idafa in fiqh.
Yeah.
So I started looking at the thing, and I realized I had made a mistake.
Oh no.
I wasn't that made a mistake, and honestly, that one day, it was probably the hardest day as a student of knowledge to know that you've told somebody something wrong. Not only, of course, you're accountable to Allah, and forget about what you're going to say to this person, but it's like now you have to break their heart because they are so happy that they're back together, husband and wife, child is okay. How do I go and relate to them that your nikah is over? How do I do that? Because it's like, imagine the roller coaster of emotions that person must be going through. So I called him. I said, look, I need to talk to you and bring all your family together, right?
Oh no!
I can't break it to him one-to-one.
Yeah.
And I called him to the masjid. I sat him down. I said, look, brother, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I said this view, but this view is incorrect. Your nikah is over. It was 3 talaqs. It wasn't 1. And then, honestly, he just burst into tears. And the family saying, how come? Look again. They're telling me, look again. I said, I've looked 100 times. Literally, I've looked at it 100 times. There's no point me looking further. I've even spoke to other scholars. They agree with my final answer now. Like, it is over. And then when I said that to him, at that time, he was broken and I had to basically be strong. But I think since that moment happened, I moved away from the divorcing. I said, look, this is not my cup of tea. I can't handle this kind of emotional ride. You need to be strong.
It's tough.
And not only that, when we give fatwa on a marital matters, you're breaking families, you're breaking lives of children.
It's difficult.
I don't want to be in a situation where I've broken somebody else's home, even though it might be a mistake, a possibility I could be wrong. So I'd stay away from that. And I've got my close associate, Mufti Asim, who's an expert in this area.
Oh, so you've put him into the firing line.
And this is again super specialization, right? Somebody who needs to specialize in divorce, talaq and nikah matters, you serve the people through. That's your speciality.
Wow.
So I stay away from those kind of queries. I think it gives me good sleep at night, honestly.
Alhamdulillah. And have you seen, I think you mentioned you might have seen the guy again.
Yeah, so after a few years, I saw this gentleman, well, actually recently, this gentleman, and subhanAllah, his whole life had changed. He had remarried. He was happier when I met him. He was so happy. And so Allah does certain things, where there's a wisdom that you can never see. And I saw this after 8 years later. I saw him living a complete different life. He was visibly happier, visibly practicing. And, he was just so welcoming, a completely different person. And I think that from that time to now, Allah has done something which is for the betterment of both parties.
Inshallah,
right?
What do you know about the wife? What happened to her?
I'm not really sure. I never ever communicated with the wife. It was always her mahrams who were there, her kind of like her father and brother that were there. But inshallah, we pray that she's also had a change for the better.
Right,
yeah, most definitely.
And what about when you were in this space, what kind of issues were leading to divorce for Muslims? Was it things to do with money, or was it other things? What was it?
It's a host of things, right? Money is definitely one thing which people always debate about, and of course, men are very protective of and trying to budget everything, and at the same time, women are working and trying to budget and different things. So money is definitely a factor.
I don't know about that, Mufti Sahib. You're very political, very diplomatic.
Well, you have to be, especially when you're on camera.
Yeah. And by the way, for the camera, I'm not saying who I'm being political now as well. I'm not saying who I was pointing to there.
No, but it's like money is a matter, but at the same time, there's a lot of emotional things, right? I think as simple as, and everybody's guilty to this, right? We're all guilty in this, where husband and wife on the phones, right? You're sitting together, but really you're far apart, right? Because she's on her phone and you're on your phone doing your thing.
Yeah.
And then that wedges a kind of gap between you two. It does, right? And it takes some kind of courage to say, you know what, we're not going to use our phones from this time to this time. Even children, how many children suffer because their parents are always on the phone and the child is screaming for attention and we don't give it because we're too busy or checking that one thing or reading this one thing or answering this like a WhatsApp. Worst off is, give your child a phone. You do it as well. That's the worst thing you could do, right? So I think the phone and kind of like interconnectedness that we have with the world now has really spoiled the home, the fabric of the home.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting story. So my phone is obviously locked, but my son Suleiman can access the camera because that I think is unlocked. So then I looked through my phone and I've got about, I think, 500 pictures, very rubbish pictures of him like looking at himself and or, like taking a picture of like his sleeping like sister, because he can get hold, because he wakes up really early in the morning and he gets hold of the phone, that's the only thing he can use.
At least memories for you one day.
I know.
You can delete the rubbish ones and keep the good ones.
I don't think there's any good ones. He's not going to be a videographer, I can tell you that. So Mufti Saab, I guess before we move on from the marriage subject, I want to ask, what's your advice for couples when, let's say, they're looking to get married, right? Because you've seen the full arc of marriage, right? Both the good, bad, and the ugly. What's your advice for couples when they're looking to get married, that they should make sure that they, do a bit of kicking the tires on or not?
I think in this day and age, it's so easy to find out about your prospective spouse, right? Social media, just literally, the person to a large extent what they're doing. So you go on their LinkedIn, their Twitter, their Instagram, and you already know what they're about and who they are, right? And it's important to have that meeting, those discussions 2-3 times, however many times you need to discuss the important matters. Have those discussions, right? Talk about things which are important to you, your plans, what you plan to do, what you intend to do. Even as small as, where will we live, right? Where will we live, right? Will we be living at my parents' place? Will we be living elsewhere? All these things are super important, because it's these small things which then become big things later on. I would say number one in this day and age, go through a person's social media, understand. That will give you a very good insight. Have those meetings and discussions, be very open.
My wife's social media was blank.
Which is, like, alhamdulillah, in a way, that's also a good thing, because it shows sometimes where a person is at, right?
Yeah.
And some people like that their spouse is not so on social media. It's like people have their different preferences, right? So some people like that, and if a person is busy, then they wouldn't have so much time and slapping away. Because look, Instagram and these things, you can get so consumed in every single moment you're capturing and thing. And then there's certain phones which give you better things, and there's equipment that you need to take better photos. So it just becomes like a you're absorbed.
Instagram in particular, I think, is a complete mess.
Yeah, it's just like your whole day and night can go into that. So if your spouse is not on, their prospective spouse is not on social media, then ask around, speak, your family, friends, neighbors, but then speak to her properly. I think dialogue is so important.
Hire a private investigator.
You're probably not that far, right?
Okay.
Because she'll get spooked and it's a little bit creepy. But it's that's like your own investigation. Like, have a file at least before you go ahead. Like, I know about this lady.
The black book.
Yeah, you can call it black book or the red book, right? Whichever works for you. But you know who you're going with, because it's your life partner. I remember reading there's 3 decisions in life which are the most important: where you study,
all right,
who you marry,
right,
and your career, like you go into. This will shape your entire life. Right, where you study has a big impact. So you're an Oxford grad, right? So that has an impact upon your kind of connections, your opportunities, right?
True.
Your person to marry, they'll help you, support you, or they'll break you, right? It's gonna be one of the two. They'll make you or break you, right?
Or both.
Or both. They'll break you, then make you again in their mold, right? Or thirdly, it'll be
is that the Japanese? They've got that skill where they break the glass. Have you seen this?
No.
So they break the vase, and there's a very special skill where they then thread it together with gold thread.
Oh wow!
So it's
discipline.
It's like an art form in itself.
Right.
So anyway, sorry, you were saying.
No, it's exactly that. So it's like these decisions are so important in life. So you do them properly. Don't just jump into marriage. Right? And then main thing I think is really important is learn about nikah and marriage before you actually go into it. So study. There'll be courses available online. There's so many courses on marriage. Read about it, learn about it, and look at yourself. More than looking at that person, understand who you are. They say, "Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu." Whoever has understood himself has understood Allah. And for your spouse is also similar. Understand your shortfalls, your weaknesses, right? Who you are. Like, if you don't rate yourself 10 out of 10, how can you demand a 10 out of 10 wife?
True,
right?
Yeah.
So sometimes your expectations have to be, managed as well.
Tempered.
Yeah, it has to be. Because it can't be that I'm a 5 out of 10. I'm going for a 10 out of 10. How does that make sense, right? I'm punching above my weight here.
Yeah.
So you have to go for the right kind of person, and you have to know yourself, your weaknesses. You may not be the most handsome, right? Although they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but really you may not be the most handsome.
Objectively, yeah.
Yeah,
It's true, right?
so it's like, how can you demand the most beautiful kind of spouse?
Yeah.
It just sometimes, if you get it, it's a blessing from Allah. Allah's blinded her, right, and granted you to her, and she's happy, alhamdulillah. If it's not the case, then there's something else which is good in her.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's perfect.
Yeah,
Everyone has something good about them. And I always say this to people who bring marital issues to me, right, where things are breaking down. I always say to people, look at yourself. Like, why did Allah bring this lady to you? There's something about you as a person that this wife is supportive of.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you kind of think on that and ponder on that, you'll realize many a time why Allah brought this girl to you and this woman to you and why you're with her, because only she can deal with you and your lifestyle and who you are. If your wife can praise you because she lives with you day and night, then there must be something praiseworthy about you, right? Of course, there's going to be anomalies there, right? So it's not like a general kind of principle, but there's always anomalies. But typically, if you can live a lifestyle at home, which is praiseworthy, then you're more likely to be praiseworthy overall.
Yeah, and I feel like with wives, because there's no like hiding from them, right? They will get to the rough bits in your personality or in your character, and they're not going to, they will kind of work at that rough bit, and then I think, and you do that for each other, right?
Yeah, it's a
and
partnership.
then eventually, I feel like, at least for me, I found that I feel like I've become hopefully a better person, or like I've evolved or progressed on certain things in my personality that and I feel like probably the same for my wife over the 8 years of marriage, and I don't think anyone can do that. I think it is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brings together people to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the husband and wife is an amazing bond in the more you speak to one another, the more you seek support from your partner, right? Which Allah encourages us to do, right? To have that mawadda and rahmah between you two, and you go to each other. Allah has called us libas, like you're clothing for one another. You protect each other. You give warmth to one another. You beautify one another. You shield each other. So Allah, the way Allah has described this kind of union is so beautiful. Your spouse will support you in your growth and development, and you'll support her in her development, and you develop and grow together. That's why having like-mindedness is really important. Having similar goals, a similar vision, and working together as a team, because this person you're going to spend your night and day with, if they're not aligned with you, you'll never be able to grow.
So Mufti Sahab, how I know that you pivoted your life, right, because of an American friend of yours, you said, right, where you used to stay up late at night, and then wake up late as well. But today I think you've got a very strict approach to time management, and I think I've met you and Sheikh Akram, who was also very strict with his time management. Because, when you see him walking around, he'll be reading a book, or when the hour finishes, that's it. He's off to the next thing. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on how you think about time management, and how that helps you get things done.
I mean, so you mentioned about American colleague and classmate, right? So I have to mention the story for the listeners and the viewers, right? So whilst I was studying my Alimiya course, I used to always, and most students do this, it's nothing about myself, right? It's all students do this. They stay awake till 1-2 o'clock studying, right? Which you've done as well. All students stay up late and study. This colleague of mine in Darul Ifta in South Africa, where we studied, he used to sleep at 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest. I used to laugh at him and say, come on, which student of knowledge sleeps at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock? How can you be a student of knowledge, right? Student of knowledge are those who stay up late, have the candle burning, under the light studying, and you're sleeping at 9, 10 o'clock, right? We'd laugh at him and joke, and he'd say, yeah, fine, whatever, he'd go to sleep. One day he challenged me, he said, do what I do. Just for one day, do what I do. I said, you want me to sleep at 9 o'clock? He said, yeah, just try it. So that one day we both went, right? He went to sleep, I went to sleep at 9 o'clock. And then we woke up about 3:30, 4 o'clock. Wow. When I woke up, my mind has never been so clear. I felt like caffeine times 10. It's like the power, the energy, just the focus I had. It was unbelievable. I think since that day till now, alhamdulillah, I've never ever slept late. And I've kind of got this routine where I go to sleep latest by 10 o'clock. Of course, in the summer months it's challenging, and in Ramadan, especially this time. But I don't sleep later than 10 normally, 10:30 at the very latest. But then you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
4 o'clock every single day. Yeah, sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday, you might just extend that a couple of more hours. But it really, that 4 a.m. time is gold. It has so many benefits. You have one-to-one time with Allah. The whole world is sleeping. It's so peaceful. At 4 o'clock, it's so peaceful. You can walk downstairs in your house and it's so serene and tranquil. There's no noise. Yeah, it's so calm. If you have a conservatory, right, and it's like open in a garden, it feels so nice. In South Africa, what we used to do was, because it used to be hot, we would go perform tahajjud outside in the grass. So you could hear the crickets making noise. So calm, a little kind of wind and breeze coming in, and you perform tahajjud, and you can recite Quran loudly. Beautiful. Like that, it's an experience, right? So I think from that time, alhamdulillah, this kind of like time management has come in, and for me, it's the most important thing behind any person, to manage your time. That's the only way you can advance in life. So I think number one, waking up early is really important. Every single day, try to hit 4 o'clock, and you have to mold yourself like that. It won't happen overnight. First you wake up at 6 o'clock, then 4:30 for a week, then 5. You make it gradual. Have a timetable. So what I do is, before I sleep every night, I'll make my timetable for the entire day.
The next day?
For the next day. So when I wake up, I'm already zoned. I know what I need to do. I'm in the zone, right? I know what I need to do. I need to do this, this, and this with this time. Otherwise, what happens is, you'll wake up at 4. You won't be motivated to wake up, first of all, because you don't know what you need to do. If you do wake up early, the problem will be, you'll be like, faffing around, okay, what do I need to do? What should I do? And you'll be confused, right? So have your timetable beforehand, your whole day. So my entire day will be mapped out what I need to do. Then I'm very strict.
How long does that take you to do?
Just my day.
As in the mapping at the end?
Just 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
I do it on my phone. Before, I have 2 whiteboards in front of me. I have a huge whiteboard in my room that's an office, in front of me and on my left.
Right.
So before, I used to write here all on my board. But then I said, why am I doing my board? It's a waste, because sometimes I'm working downstairs, sometimes I'm working here, I'm working there. So now I just have an app, right? Todoist. I like the app Todoist, right? It's a very nice app.
Free app?
It's a free app, yeah. It's a free
Sponsored
app.
by Todoist.
It's a widget, right? So I have these widgets on Android. You can have all these widgets, right? So I have this widget there. My entire day is there. Let's tick it off as I do.
That's good.
Right? So every single moment I have nothing free in the day. Even if I'm going to the gym, that's been slotted in. Otherwise, you won't go to the gym. If it's not in your diary, you're not going to go gym, right? If you're doing 10,000 steps a day, you have to put it in your diary.
So do you put it in your? You don't put it in your calendar. You put it on like a checklist.
Yeah, like a checklist, just like a list I make.
Okay.
So I put, for example, 4 to 4:30 X, 4:30 to 5:15 this.
Oh, I see.
So the entire day is filled, and alhamdulillah, I do that every single day, and it's worked wonders for me.
Very interesting. And if you do you have you've got kids, right?
Yeah, 2.
2, mashallah.
2 girls.
2 girls.
I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Okay, great. So you'll get the point of this question now. So let's say they've now grown up. They're now like early 20s. You're looking for, maybe even late teens. You're looking for a spouse. What are the qualities, of a man are you looking for in them? I assume time management might be one of them.
There's many things. I think stability, piety. Of course, the Messenger of Allah told us, look for a person who's pious, right? So that's definitely like number one. But I think financial stability is really important. Being educated, that brings some kind of level of like reasoning in a person, which is needed. And then I guess some passion and some kind of objective in life. Like, what does a person want to achieve? Does he have a vision for his life? Right? Or is he, and I won't be making that decision. Of course, it's your daughter or the person getting married. She has more of a say, but this is what I would be interested in. But many a time, at the age of 20, who has a vision nowadays, right? That comes, I think marriage really makes a person grow. But if I would be really inspired if I saw a 21-year-old with a vision. You know what, this is my life, this is what I want to do, this is like my growth kind of thing. Wow. And I think another thing is investing. Because a person who's an investor, like typically they're much more calculated with their risk management. They understand things much more. Like, this is what I've seen so far. I might be wrong. There may be some crazy people out there in the investing world, but a person who's been a seasoned investor, investing for several years, they potentially have much more control over the emotions.
I like it.
Right?
I like it, Mufti Sam.
So somebody who's an investor, I would be really taken aback and I would say impressed.
Marriage tip. Marriage tip for those.
Find an investor for your your daughter or for your son.
Or if you're not married, start investing.
Yeah.
I like it. Because this is going to be great. We've got the thumbnails. We've got all the one-liners. That's why you wanted to end it. He's like, okay, I'm done now. Mufti Sahib, I wanted to ask you finally about this concept of being a polymath or having a multidisciplinary approach to life. And I find that some scholars or some people are very focused and specialized, and others are a little bit multidisciplinary, or others are multidisciplinary in a specialized way. And I think you're probably the latter. So let's say we have a young man, who's 20, with all the credentials of potentially being a good, spouse as well, and he has that ambition and he wants to specialize in X subject, right? Or he wants to be, something in X area. What would your advice be to him? How to play it out?
I would say first, go to 50 people who've been there, done that, right? And you consult them. Ask them, this is what I want to do. You advise them, because they've gone through what you want to go through. Yeah. They know all the mistakes. I was about to do an MBA, and I actually called you about this as well, right? I asked your opinion and view. I wanted to study an MBA. I had been accepted at Warwick University, top MBA. But I called almost 50 people.
Oh, wow.
You're one of them. So I had a list of 50 people that I need to ask these 50 people, what are your thoughts on me doing an MBA? Is it worthwhile? Because it's a huge investment.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time.
One of the 3 subjects, one of the 3 questions.
Yeah. So it's I thought, is it worthwhile? Now I spoke to yourself and spoke to so many people that as well, right? And who are leaders in Islamic finance and in their industries generally. And that really helped me. That changed. That's why I didn't do an MBA. Had I just gone with my own kind of impulse, I'd have been stuck in a classroom right now, studying somewhere, listening to a lecture, and working towards a deadline. Yeah. But sometimes, we are very limited in our understanding. You have to sometimes be humble as well, right? And say, I don't know everything. Go to people, and this goes back to our initial point that we discussed, mentorship and everything, right? You always have to ask other people who've been there and done that. It will really help. So a polymath, a person wants to do, number one, ask 50 people. Right? You won't be confused, you'll definitely get insights. You don't have to follow what everybody says. Just take the sound bites from each person and then make a note of that. Number 2 is be very clear, try to work out. So on a piece of paper, this really helped me. So when I was in the first year, this is quite hilarious. I wrote down in my Alimiya program, when I was studying, 6-year course, in the first year I sat down and think, what do I want to become? And so I made on an A4 paper, in the middle I wrote Mujtahid, right? And then I wrote all the paths and all the things I need to become a Mujtahid. Of course, nobody's going to become a Mujtahid today. We're nowhere near Ijtihad, but that was it was an ambition. I want to get there. That's what my end all and be all is, right? So I wrote, okay, I need usul fiqh, usul tafsir, usul hadith, fiqh, this, that, tafsir. Everything I need to learn going into the circle. So I think having a vision of where you want to be is really important. I knew personally from the second year of my Alimiya course, I want to get into Islamic finance, and I want to study with this Mufti Ibrahim Desai who lives and stays in South Africa. I knew that from my second year. Wow. And so I was so focused. So I was already reading about buyu, mu'amalat, finance from the 3rd year. Wow. And alhamdulillah, that really helped me. Yeah. So I think be very clear on why you're doing things. Don't just jump into something and think, okay, now what am I going to do with it? Yeah. Do something only when you know the outcomes and what you can achieve with it, right? So that's number 2.
But people find that really hard. Because I think what you're saying though there is that have a bit of a goal, have a bit of a vision. But I think that's the thing that people sometimes struggle with.
It's like self-discovery and self-exploration. You have to sit down, make time for yourself. Okay, I'm sitting down, all distractions aside. What do I want from my life? And this is the way I think about at times, when I pass away, how do I want to, number 1, have an impact on the world? What legacy do I want to leave behind? Yeah. And how do I want to be remembered? Which good works do I want to take with me to the akhirah, right? To the afterlife. Yeah. And when you answer all these questions, you'll typically have something. So for me, it was about passion. I found, and it was common that students find finance and buyu and mu'amalat the most difficult. Yeah. Right. So in my madrasa and where I studied, that's typically the most difficult subject, and it was also the area which was most kind of innovative, where new things were coming out. Because as a student, you want to do, like, you want to learn, you want to implement new things and do some research. So finance was the only area which was really active. Everything else seemed to be very static, right? So I always had the passion towards, okay, how do we excel? How do we see Islamic kind of implementation? So that was really my kind of impetus for going into Islamic finance, I guess. But yeah, coming back to your original question. So I think have a vision. It's really important. Sit down, understand yourself. That's the truth for everything we mentioned. We talked about marriage. That was the advice, right?
Yeah.
Understand yourself. We spoke about mentorship, right? Understand yourself, who you are. Taking knowledge, understand yourself, right? Your own growth, understand yourself. It all starts from you. Like, you break yourself down, understand your weaknesses, your strengths, and then you work and build.
No, Jazakallah khair, Mufti Saab. It's always a pleasure spending time with you and learning from you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your efforts. And keep you sincere and contributing to the ummah, inshallah. So folks, I hope you enjoyed that. If there are other people that you would really like us to talk to, or for Mufti Saab to potentially talk to, then please let us know in the comments below. We'd also love to hear your reactions to some of the topics that were covered, things like the marital stuff, the money stuff, self-development, multidisciplinary approaches to life, Islamic finance, where it is today, where it could be, and everything in between. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.